Tomorrow is a big day as MLB rosters expand from 26 players to 28. With the Mets in postseason contention and trying to win a World Series this year, they still have a lot of decisions to make. Any player that is added post the September 1st deadline will not be eligible for the postseason roster. So this is officially the Mets' last chance to see what they have in their minor league depth. So without further ado, here are 6 potential September call-up candidates for the Mets.
Two, Vader. Swings and misses, strike 3. He struck him out. 5 big pitchers combined for the second no-hitter in New York Mets history.
Now, I focused this list around players that have really not made an impression this year. They were never really a key part to this roster at any point of the season. So guys like Dominic Smith and Travis Jankowski, we've already seen what they can do. It's not much. So they definitely will not be a part of this list or in this video. So let's start with the player that we've seen the most of out of all these 6 guys, Khalil Lee. For those of you who don't remember, the Mets acquired Khalil Lee in a 3-team trade with Boston and Kansas City that was centered around Andrew Benintendi going over to Kansas City. He's had a few cups of coffee in the majors in these last 2 seasons. He's a toolsy outfielder with great raw power. Post-draft, he has fallen down the rankings a lot from the bottom half of the top 10 to now the 23rd overall prospect in the Mets system. Now, why would the Mets call him up? Well, with the recent tough stretch of Tyler Naquin and the limited production that we've gotten with Travis Jankowski when he was here, it does make sense to maybe bring in some more outfield help for the rest of the season. He's not having the best season, but he's picked it up recently. He's slashing just .210, .328, .378 with a 90 WRC plus in Triple A. I personally am not the biggest fan of Khalil Lee. I think there's a lot of holes in his development as a player. Even though he did start to walk a little bit more, the strikeouts are still a problem. Still has massive launch angle issues with a huge uppercut, and he still makes a lot of mental mistakes for a guy at the age of 24. I personally believe that if they were to go in this direction tomorrow, it might be his final chance with the team. Next up, we have Daniel Palka. Now, Palka was a minor league signing by the Mets this year. He's 30 years old. He's bounced around the league since being drafted in 2013. He is having a fantastic year in Syracuse. He's slashing .272, .349, .532 with a 130 WRC+. Palka can be considered for one reason, and that is the production so far that you are getting from Darren Ruff. And like Darren Ruff, Palka can play first base and the corner outfield. He also destroys left-handed pitching, even as a lefty bat. Now, Palka was almost called up earlier in this season, but apparently he failed a physical to do so. I'm not really sure what the development on that whole story was. One thing that can keep Palka out of the September roster is probably the overload of lefty bats that the Mets would have if they brought him up. Either way, the Mets have been very low in the power department all season, and Palka is definitely someone that you can consider, but the next guy may be the better option. And that brings us to our final position player on this list, which is Mark Vientos. I'd say I've never seen Mets fans clamor for a prospect, but I'd be lying when I'm talking about Mark Vientos. Mets fans have wanted this guy in the majors all year, and they do have a good reason for that. Vientos is an incredible power threat, and his gap-to-gap hitting is something that the Mets really are in need of. Now, this year in Triple A, he's been killing it, slashing .286, .365, .438 with a 136 WRC+. We all know my concerns with Vientos, and I really don't feel like repeating myself at this point, but the main factor will be, probably once again, the production that you're getting from Darren Ruff. Now, currently, the Mets are in the middle of a series with the Dodgers, and in those 3 games, the Mets will face all left-handed pitching, which is what Ruff was brought in to do to dominate. If he does not proceed to do that, I think that's when you give Mark Vientos the call. On the other hand, Mets GM Billy Epler is a huge fan of versatility, and that could be a factor that keeps him in AAA. We all know that Mark Vientos is not the best defender at third base or at first base. They've tried him in the outfield. He's not the best. Now, in my opinion, I personally don't think he's ready for the majors, but if your hand is forced for power protection around Alonso, you might as well give him a shot. Now let's get to pitchers, and number 4 on this list, I have Connor Gray. The Mets signed Connor Gray as a minor league free agent this offseason. He is 28 years old. He hasn't had the best year in Triple A, but with great batted ball peripherals in that sample, I do think that they can have a durable relieving option if needed. He has a mid-90s fastball with a high-profile spin curveball, very similar to Seth Lugo type of spin rates, low-shifted slider, and a low-90s changeup. Huge strike spammer, very similar to Kyle Hendricks, where he's not going to overpower you with big velocity, but he will deceive you with movement. This is an option that I really see as an innings eater that can kind of take the pressure off of Trevor Williams a little bit, because he has definitely been overworked a lot this season. The Mets need arms, and the best arms at this point are contact managers. Contact managers get outs and eat inning. That's what I think the Mets can get with Connor Gray if they were to call him up tomorrow. Now, the fifth candidate I have in this list is Josh Walker. I personally am a big fan of this kid, but it is probably unlikely with how little he has pitched due to his injury this year. Either way, he's a 6'6" lefty with fantastic command of the strike zone, mid to upper 90s fastball, late deception curveball with two different changeups, one being more vertically enhanced and the other one being more horizontally enhanced. He's a great contact manager, induces ground balls incredibly well, especially against left-handed hitters. The Mets really need some lefties in this pen, and believe me, I know all about Joely Rodriguez's horrible batted ball luck, but he really has a tough time finding the strike zone, and he tends to lose his head a lot. Now, Joey Lucchesi could be a reason why Josh Walker might not be called up, but until he's fully healthy, I do think that Walker does deserve a chance at the major league level before the season ends. And our sixth and final candidate, this guy has definitely gained quite the fan base over the past few months. Let's talk about Bryce Montes de Oca. He's 25 years old, he's 6'7", 265 pounds, a massive human being. He's a former 9th round pick by the Mets back in 2018. This guy has had an incredible baseball journey, which I might make another video about. Had a lot of injuries to start off his minor league career, did not pitch until 2021, but ever since then, de Oca has shown incredible potential to be a possible dominant reliever in the future. He has a fastball that can go all the way up to 102 to 103 miles an hour, a wipeout slurvy slider mix with ridiculous extension. He also has a high 80s to low 90s changeup that he does have a good control over a bit, but scouts have kind of seen it as a little bit below average. But even with that violent delivery and explosive arsenal, he does have a big walk problem. It has gotten better a little bit over the last few months for him, but it is still a concern. Even though regarding the walk problem, I do think Jeremy Hefner has a few tweaks that he can enforce, but I will not get into that just yet. But with the amount of free agents that the Mets have in their bullpen, I do believe that de Oca is a future piece. The ceiling is high for him, and I love to see what he does at the major league level. Now, if the Mets were not to retain Edwin Diaz, which I think they will, you might have his replacement right here in the 9th inning. You might as well call him up and see what you have for the near future. So there are 6 quick September call-up candidates for the Mets tomorrow. We'll see what they do and what approach that they take. If they want to go more position players or if they go more arms and try to add to that bullpen depth. I can't say this team hasn't puzzled me with a lot of roster moves that they've made throughout the season. So I'm really hoping that Dominic Smith and Travis Jankowski aren't the two guys that get called up. But this is definitely a chance for some young players who don't have major league experience to get some for the rest of the season. My fingers are just crossed that they make the right decision.